obtain the services of an independent analyst to examine the proposed amendment to these contracts after they were completed and negotiated with Covanta of Union, Inc. The independent analyst is a gentleman who's here this evening. His name is Steve Gabel. He's the president of Gabel Associates, an independent energy consulting firm. In the past, Mr. Gabel has been the director of the Division of Solid Waste for the Department of Environmental Protection and Energy. He was the director of the Division of Solid Waste for the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. He has previously served as the bureau chief of the Bureau of Electric Rates and Tariffs for the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities and has served as an economist for the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. He's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and Rutgers University. Mr. Gabel has prepared a report and has remarks for this evening. If I could call him to the podium to make a brief presentation to the board.
I was retained by the authority to evaluate the agreements that have been renegotiated by the authority and are in front of you today. We spent a great deal of time, as Mr. Williams indicated, we spend a lot of time both in the energy marketplaces as well as in the solid waste industries, evaluating different issues around economics and around risk issues. My background, as he mentioned, is in economics, as well as other folks in the firm who looked at this also have economic, accounting, and financial backgrounds. So I provided you all with a full written report. I have exactly 3 pages of PowerPoint, so this should be pretty painless, I think, as I go through it. But you do have the full report that you can review. What we've done is to closely review the amended agreements, particularly relative to the existing agreements. There's 2 key elements, at least in my mind, that drive this renegotiation, and that is an extension of the agreements out to 2045 and a refinancing around that extension that reduce the annual debt service around the project. So those are, I would call those the economic drivers of what you're seeing in what really is a comprehensive set of agreements, but also highly detailed and complex set of agreements. There are a lot of triggers and numbers moving around inside this agreement. So what we needed to do to look at this was to not just look at the benefits, and Mr. Enright talked about some of those benefits over the last few minutes. But as with any agreement, there are benefits. Sometimes there are costs. In this case, there are not. But there are also risks that are implicit in anything you do. There are going to be some forms of risk imposed on people on both sides of a contract. I wasn't so much concerned about the risks imposed on Covanta Union, but I was concerned about the risks that would be imposed on Union County, its municipalities, its citizens, and I wanted to kind of conduct a stress test on the agreements to make sure they would hold up over the long pull, because certainly 2045 is the long pull. So we spent some time looking closely at the benefits and risks. Finally, as I mentioned, I called it a stress test. The economists really call it a sensitivity analysis, which is looking at what happens if certain good events or bad events happen in the future. You want to make sure that this agreement will hold water economically over its term. So, Dennis, can you flip to the next one? This summarizes in some way some of the issues that Mr. Enright talked about, which are, as I mentioned, the 2 drivers, which are extending the agreement and refinancing, create really a bucket of economic benefits that get shown through these agreements in various different ways. It doesn't show up in one place in the tip fee or another place in enforcement payments, but there are a series of benefits. What I provided on the screen, and I don't know if you all can see that. You have? Okay. Is a summary of those benefits. This is a long-term agreement out through 2045. what we've done is calculate the benefits both in nominal terms, but also, being an economist, in present value terms, along recognizing that $1 10 years from now or 20 years from now doesn't have the same value as $1 today. And I don't think it's fair to look at a benefit of $1 20 years from now as you would as $1 in your pocket today. And the column marked NPV tries to capture that concept and puts everything in 2011 dollars. As you can see from the schedule, there are some significant benefits. They do start on the day that this agreement becomes effective after it's approved, if it's approved by the DEP and Department of Community Affairs. And as you go down the list, we've stated them in 5 different categories. One is improved lower waste disposal fees, which over the term are benefits of the $28 million that you see there. Increased host fees to the city of Rahway, a present value of $8.4 million. Lease payments, which Union County Utility Authority shares, of $65 million. Enforcement payments of $2.1 million. And a down the road benefit, which is in 2029, rather than Covanta Union selling all the energy. This is a very large generating facility as well as a solid waste processing facility. Sells that energy into the wholesale marketplace. In 2029, you enjoy 10% of that benefit, and that's an important condition, as you can see, because of present valuing the $64 million of benefit that we calculate is actually only $17 million today, for nominal benefits totaling $302 million. Present value benefits, because this is a long agreement, of $121 million. So that's a summary of the benefits. With these benefits, there is additional risk built into this agreement, and we've spent a lot of time looking at this agreement. Can you flip to the next slide? Essentially, what happens within the agreement, there is a change in the guarantee waste level up to 430,000 tons per year. Superficially, that by itself is an increase in risk. You have to deliver those tons either from in-county or out-of-county waste streams or keep Covanta Union whole. However, as you work through the agreement, there are some very significant provisions in the agreement which create a very strong incentive, not just for the Union County Utilities Authority to make sure that the waste is delivered from both throughout the county and by signing agreements with other local or county units around the region where there's a need in other counties to find waste disposal options. But maybe more importantly, it creates a very strong incentive for Covanta to make sure there's adequate waste in the facility. I should note that historically, Covanta has, using solid waste terms, filled the plant. They've always brought the plant in at the average over the last 6 years has been 549,000 tons, well above the $430,000 minimum under the agreement. And they, under this agreement, have a strong incentive to keep it that way. They not only, the county does not have to keep the utility authority does not have to keep Covanta whole if they lose energy revenues by a failure to get waste flow. What that means is if the agreement and the minimums are not met, Covanta loses all its energy revenues. They're not in the business to lose energy revenues. They have a very strong incentive to go out and find waste to bring to that plant and make sure those minimums are kept. If they do that, that's to the credit of the authority and allows you to avoid any of these guaranteed waste delivery provisions in the agreement. So there's a strong incentive for Covanta Union to generate the energy revenues. Likewise, there's a strong incentive for Covanta Union to work in the waste market to maximize the revenues, and that provides a very strong level of protection the authority because they're the ones out there operating the plant, bringing in the waste, and that should mitigate the risk of not making this guarantee. What we did on top of this in terms of economic analysis, I indicated that we did some sensitivity analysis. We analyzed a number of scenarios, including what I like to call, and what we do for a lot of our clients, is something called the perfect storm analysis. What if everything goes wrong? How badly do you get hurt? This agreement under that analysis was that even under those highly unlikely conditions of bad economy, difficult waste flow, the agreement holds water, and the authority and its customers, citizens of Union County, are not hurt. So on that basis, I'm comfortable with the agreement in terms of the strong level of economic benefits and the risk mitigation that's built into the contract. Thank you.
Is this a regulated industry? Because you mentioned CPI tonnage. I guess tonnage increased by CPI or cost increased by CPI. I don't know. Is this a regulated industry? Oh, and I don't. Private sector making money. That's what it's all about, because then they can, they can hire more people and spend more in the economy. So that I don't find a problem. But just those two other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. With respect to the payment of the professional fees that Mr. Berry asked, those are not taxpayer dollars. They are paid, in this case, there will be an additional financing. As I mentioned before, the debt is repaid by Covanta, including those costs. And with respect to the fees that we've charged for negotiating and doing the transaction, those are paid out of funds generated by the disposal of solid waste. They're not taxpayer dollars.
More or less, it's coming from Covanta, more or less. That's what you're saying.
Most of it.
Okay. And also, is this a regulated industry? You mentioned CPI.
Mr. Gabel, is this a regulated industry? It used to be.
Unfortunately, there's not a simple answer to the question of whether it's a regulated industry. I would say it's not regulated in the manner that you think of PSE&G or Elizabethtown Gas Company being regulated with respect to rate cases and things of that nature at the Board of Public Utilities. It is regulated insofar as the service agreements and the other agreements that are subject of the hearing tonight and that you've been asking about go down both to the Department of Community Affairs and the Department of Environmental Protection, who look at this from both a, I'll call it, local budget point of view, that's Department of Community Affairs, and Department of Environmental Protection, who look at it from both a, I'll call it a broad planning perspective. Is this the right thing for Union County and New Jersey? They also look at it closely from an economic point of view. And in that regard, they can get advice and opinions from the Division of Rate Counsel, which is a state agency that looks at ratepayer interests. So in that respect, it is regulated, just not the way you think of a PSE&G or one of the other local utilities.